Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of Big Chad and Friends. I am your host, the one and only Big Chad. And on this podcast, I'm going to be interviewing musicians, artists, creative people, people who I think bring something cool, unique, and interesting to the world. And my goal is to give you a little glimpse into their life and see what makes them tick. And I could not think of a better guest to have on my very first episode. He is a musician, an audio engineer, a music producer, a mastering engineer, a videographer, a tech genius. He does everything. The man deserves a cape. I am honored to call him one of my best friends. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, please welcome my good friend, Mr. Augustine Ortiz Jr. Augustine, how the hell are you, bud?
Doing great, man. Glad to be here. Stoked to be on your show. And congratulations on finally starting your podcast. It's been
I've only been bugging you about it for what, like 6 months, 7 months, if not longer than that. I can't even remember. But yeah, it's finally getting a facelift and off the ground. Now, you brought up an interesting point. We were just chit-chatting like via text before. You're like, are we going to have adult beverages? And I was like, oh man, I didn't think about that. But yes, we will, to celebrate the start of the first podcast. Now, we were already discussing this earlier. I have a typical whiskey lowball, but then you had to get all fancy and show off with your what do you call them, a nasal sniffer or something or whatever it is?
Yeah, the Glencairn, right? Yeah, the fancy whiskey glass.
And I just feel less classy. I don't know, man. I don't know if I can hang with the likes of you. But what are you drinking tonight? I'm curious.
So this is actually my favorite whiskey. Figured it was appropriate to hang with one of my favorite people. It says Hibiki Harmony, which is a Japanese. It's a blend, but it's a Japanese whiskey, kind of in the Scottish family, but really friendly. I don't know. It's one of my favorites. I love it.
Dude, the Japanese whiskey have like legit surprised me over the last few years. Like, I've never tried them before because I was like, what is it? I mean, that just seems weird, a Japanese whiskey. But then Costco, of all places, had some on sale, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I was like, oh crap, this is really good. And then I was at a Japanese restaurant and they had like a whiskey flight. And I was like, why not? And I was just honestly very, very much surprised about how well their whiskey tastes and how good it is.
Yeah, for a while they were some of the best in the world. You can barely get age statement Japanese whiskey because everybody's buying it up. It's really hard to get. Yeah, they've done a great job. It's good stuff.
I'll be damned. So tonight I am drinking Basil Hayden.
Oh yeah, also good stuff.
It is. You know who got that for me was Mike from RivKit. He got it for me for my birthday.
Oh, sweet.
And, yeah, so that was pretty delicious. So I'm enjoying it. But yes, cheers to you, my friend. Cheers to the first episode. Cheers to friendship. Cheers to all that good stuff.
Cheers, man. Fucking pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I was doing the math. We have been friends for about, I think, going on 14 or 15 years now, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about because it really does seem like just yesterday we were in the rehearsal space rocking out. I'm curious. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. I'm curious. Do you have a first recollection of like our first encounter and like becoming friends? Like, do you remember kind of when that flip kind of switched for you? I'm putting you on the spot here. I know, but I'm just kind of curious.
I think my first memory was probably, I think it was like the first time you came by the studio and we were working on the Far Forbidden album, right? And I mean, you were obviously an audio engineer and, I was working on it at the time. And yeah, I think just from there, like that's my distinct memory of like, oh yeah, we were going to get along,
Yeah.
Because it was definitely like more collaboration and like open. It wasn't like, because with audio engineers, you can get kind of, who has the bigger dick, I should say, but like, it wasn't that at all, right? Which is awesome. So yeah, I mean, right there, I was like, oh yeah, we'll be fine. And we've been friends ever since. So that's my distinct. I almost don't even remember the rehearsal space as much, or us playing together in the rehearsal space as much as more just like studio and meeting in the studio.
That was for me too. For me, it was, I don't know if I keep wanting to say we were out to dinner somewhere after a practice, like getting wings probably, because that's what, we do, because, we are the connoisseur of the buffalo wing.
Yeah.
But I distinctly remember because at the time I was going to school for audio engineering and you had already kind of established yourself in the scene. And I just remember picking your brain and being like, oh my God, this guy's going to be my friend. He's a genius. We're going to be buds. And it just went from there. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I was just kind of curious because it's kind of fun. I mean, shit, 15 years, 14 years.
Dude, it flies. It's freaking crazy. I mean, even thinking back to being in Minneapolis, right? Or in the Twin Cities, like I now have been gone more than I was there,
Has it really been that long? Like,
oh yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, because I was only there for like 4 or 5 years. So yeah, if it's been
Oh, I
15
suppose.
years, I've been here for over a decade now. So it's like, damn, you know.
Dude, you threw the most epic parties at that place in St. Paul. Like, it was the only place that I knew of that like we would still be raging at like 7 in the morning. And
Oh
just,
yeah, man.
and I remember like it was a St. Patrick's Day party, and I just remember at like 7 in the morning there was still like corned beef on the stove, and I was like, "This is amazing." So I just like mowed some corned beef and just kept going. I was like, "Only at Augustine's would this happen."
Yeah, man, I love to party. It hasn't been so much the last few years, because I lived in like a '70s shack for a while, and so we did a lot of parties there. But and then my last place wasn't as conducive to partying, just because we're like in a neighborhood and the house layout was kind of weird.
Yeah,
And then this house now is really small, so I don't know, but maybe when it starts to cool down a little bit, we'll start doing some stuff outside.
there you go.
But yeah, I mean, trying to get back into that, it's always good times.
Something that you did that I always thought was really cool was, I mean, obviously you're a musician and an engineer, but you would always set up instruments in a live recording rig downstairs, and there would just be like a 9 hour long jam session of whoever decided to go down there. And because you had the electronic kit, you had a couple guitars, you had a keyboard, you had a vocal mic set up. And I just remember like about a week after every party, you would kind of combine the best of the shenanigans that was made and would put it into something for us to listen to. And I was just like, God, that's such a cool idea. Like, I love that. It was fun to listen back to.
Yeah, no, and I want to do more of those. I haven't done too many of those since there, because like there it works. I had my studio in my house, but
Yeah.
now that the studio is somewhere else and there's like not a lot of parking and not really good setup for partying there, it's kind of weird. But I'm trying to get back to that. Because I definitely want to do more of that because it was fun, right? And actually, it's a great way to like advertise and stuff too. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're like, hey, we just went down there and messed around, and then here's what we came out with. So yeah, I would definitely want to do more of that. Yeah, those were tons of fun, man. And yeah, I'm hoping to do more of that, here in the next year or so. We'll see how it goes. I got to build a new studio first, but that's coming. And with that, I'm hoping that we can do more of that and have more fun with that, and actually have like full instruments or pull out the E kit again. What the hell? Why the hell not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, now that I've got some space to actually do that, I think it'd be fun to do that again. But yeah, those are fun, and it was cool to go through everything because some of the stuff was actually pretty damn good.
It really
That was the funny
was.
part.
Yeah. No, listening back was kind of like, we came up with that. Like, what the heck? And it was interesting to hear when people switched, because you notice the distinct styles and people on different instruments and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, oh, Chad's on drums and Augustine's on bass right now, and then Chris is on guitar. It's just kind of fun to go back and through them. So
Oh yeah, totally.
but
No, I
anyway,
miss that.
we're talking like we're best friends here because we are. But let's give the people a more of a simpler introduction to you. So I have a little segment here that I like to call First Date Questions. I realized that I could do banners, and I'm kind of excited about that fact that I could do banners. So I'm just going to hit you with some rapid fire questions just to kind of get the world to get to know you. You just hit me with whatever first comes to mind. All right. Favorite food?
Ooh, bacon.
Oh, amen. Favorite vegetable is bacon. That's what I'm saying. Favorite beverage, both of the adult and non-adult kind. I think we already know what the adult favorite beverage is, but what about
whiskey for sure. Non-adult shit, man. Dude, I've been really digging root beer lately. I know it's like a thing, but dude, been crushing root beer. Don't know what it is.
Do you ever get fancy? Throw a little ice cream in there, go with a little root beer float action?
Haven't in a while, but probably should. But yeah, just straight up root beer, man. Cold root beer. I don't know. It's been a jam lately.
I go through root beer phases. I understand that. There's sometimes I'm just like, damn, like an ice cold root beer just sounds glorious right now. So I feel that.
There's definitely phases. I'd say most favorite drinks end up in the soda category. Definitely like the fizzy sugared drinks for sure.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Favorite toy as a kid?
Favorite toy as a kid? Ooh, damn. I'm trying to think of like the first one that comes to mind. I mean, depends which era, right? Like Game Boy would be up there, right? But that's later. Earlier than that, I don't know, man. Bicycle probably, or I still have.
What's a little Game Boy like that?
Yeah, Game Boy. There you go.
All right. Current favorite TV show or current binge watching show?
Current binge watching show. Damn, I just blasted through Iron Chef on Netflix. So
my God, I love that show. They have the old school Japanese ones on. Have you ever heard of Pluto TV?
I've heard of it. I don't have it, but I've
Yeah,
heard
it's
of
like
it.
a streaming thing, but they have Iron Chef on 24/7, like the old school ones, the Japanese ones.
Hell yeah.
Dude, it's so cool.
Yeah, this is the new one. It's good. So I just binged that. I would say, eating competitions lately. I've been really into fucking those. I don't know why, because I don't, do that anymore. And then, oh man, yeah, that went through an anime binge just a few months ago. So it circles around depending on what I'm into. I was doing samurai movies there for a while, so
Nice.
it definitely it's cyclical. It's like my music taste. It's cyclical.
I feel you. All right, let's see. Oh, my laptop just closed. Okay, I love this question. If you were to be a breed of dog, what breed of dog would you be?
Ooh, man. I don't know. Chihuahua's got it pretty sweet, man. I'd probably be one of my own Chihuahuas.
One of your own. That makes sense because you'll get some TLC. Okay, I dig it.
Exactly.
What was the first CD and or album you ever owned, or you recall in your possession?
Oh man, I got really lucky on that one. So I bought two at the same time, and I still remember, which is crazy. So it was Ozzy Osbourne Tribute to Randy Rhoads, right? Fucking incredible album. And the second one wasn't as good, but it was Black Sabbath with Tony Martin, and I can't remember what the name of the album is.
Oh, okay.
But those were like the I think it was Tony Martin shit. I might be wrong on that. Don't crucify me, please, in the comments. But it's with the singer that like nobody knows about. Like everybody knows Ozzy, everybody knows Dio. It was like one of the dudes nobody really knows about.
Yep.
And it was late, like like 92, 94. It's a killer album, but it kind of had to grow on me. But that Ozzy Osbourne Tribute to Randy Rhoads is stellar.
Dude.
Freaking stellar.
Anything with Randy. I mean, anything with Ozzy. I mean, the guy is just. I feel very lucky that I've actually got a chance to see Ozzy once. That I feel like bucket list to see a legend of that. He's just a legend. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So yeah. All right. So to kind of tie into the music, what was the first instrument you ever owned?
First instrument I owned would be a snare drum in particular.
Oh, okay.
Like a real instrument. Yeah, so I actually started on drums.
No shit.
And basically was terrible at that, and then switched over to guitar, later on. So a snare drum, actually, just a snare drum is what I started on, and then eventually pieced together a shitty kit.
I'll be damned, I didn't know that. Favorite activity outside of music? What do you like to do?
Watching movies. I mean, it's pretty. I mean,
well, yeah. In all fairness, you work like a mofo, and so yeah, like downtime for you, I would completely understand. Like, yes, that is a favorite activity.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Last question here. What would people be surprised to find currently on your playlist?
On my playlist, dude, I just got into this new band. The band's called Modern Woman. And it's nobody's heard of them. And they're pretty small, but I don't even know how I heard of them, but I stumbled across them, and they have like an EP and like a single out, like really small. And what intrigued me is like, it came in on my random playlist, and I was like, I don't know what genre is this, because it's kind of progressive, but it's kind of like rocky, but it's like sexy, but like heavy, but kind of weird. It has definitely pulls from like the Mike Patton era, stuff a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a link, man. That's been my latest jam. I was like, this is cool. It took me a minute to like figure out, like, do I like it? I'm not sure, which are like my favorite type of things. So
was it a recommendation on Spotify? Is that how you found it?
I think it came up on like a playlist with Tidal, because a lot of times I'll throw on just like new music, like a recommended for me kind of thing, and so it covers a wide gamut of like of like rock and death metal and progressive metal and a lot of pop, and I like a lot of like lo-fi synth pop, so all that kind of coming together makes for a really strange experience musically. I also listen to like movie soundtracks and old like 80s, like the Midnight stuff like that, the 80s revival stuff. So yeah, I'm all up. Plus I listen to whatever I'm working on. So I've been, so if it's something avant-garde or something where it's just like a noise or doom or death metal, whatever, I'm always listening to that. I mean, even just the track I'm working on behind me right now, that one, I'd never heard of St. Vincent, the band. Never heard of them, So, and it's awesome. It's kind of like a poppy, you know, lower fi, almost rock kind of thing.
Okay.
And, you know, yeah, so I listened to all that too. So yeah, my playlist is freaking weird. So it popped up on one of those, and I mean, a lot of it's just like noise in the background, but that one kind of stood out to me.
No,
So
I'm
yeah,
definitely gonna check that out. I have it written down, so I
yeah,
will scope that one. Modern Women, right?
Modern Woman, yeah,
Right, for sure.
woman, I think, an, yeah, woman,
Oh, oops.
singular, Modern Woman.
Have my handy dandy iPad here for notes. All right, cool. So, I mean, for you, this is again, a lot of these questions are kind of selfish because they're just stuff I don't know, but I figure people will want to know too. Obviously, you have the musician side of you, which kind of encompasses your guitar playing, your bass playing. They also, and you're producing and engineering, but then you also have the tech side. I mean, you're a computer guy, you build amplifiers and fix them and stuff like that. What passion came first? Was it more of the technical side in terms of like building things and understanding electricity and electronics, or was it the music? Like, what was the chicken and what was the egg?
Chicken for sure was computers, like
Okay.
definitely. Like I got into computers. I mean, like the first time I saw one, I was like, how do I play with this thing? And this was, man, I'm a fucking old guy, so it was back with like the Apple IIs. Plus, I grew up in like a small rural town, so that like we had one computer for the whole fucking school, right? And yeah, so it's definitely computers, and then computers and computer games, that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely into there, and then got into like programming and gaming and just learning how they work. So it's definitely computers to start out, and then music was after that, and then the electronics and amplifiers and all that kind of came together, with kind of those two becoming combined. Because I was this is like the beginning of the internet, right? Like the internet was still like relatively new, so you're
Yeah.
still learning about a lot of that stuff. And my dream was to build my own amplifier, so I started down that route of how these work and how do they work. So it kind of went down that path of how to build an amplifier, and quickly learned to build a high gain amplifier is really fucking hard. So I built a couple out of like cake pans and some like Fender clones and stuff, but then I found a schematic of like a 5150, and I was like, this is a bit much. um so yeah, so there was a limit there, but through that, and then of course just out of necessity, right? I was like, well, I could pay my amp tech, you know, $300 to replace an input jack, or I could do it myself. So I have a distinct memory in college of like one of my amplifiers broke. I broke like the fuse holder or something, and the electrical engineers were just like, you just got to go for it, man. Like, don't be afraid, just go for it. And I was like, sure. So I bought a soldering iron at Radio Shack and went for it, And so since then, yeah, that's been another passion that kind of fueled up. So a lot of it comes out of necessity, I guess, after that, right? It was like even videography, which is a relatively recent one. It was like no one's doing videos around here. My main video guy has kind of had a change, he's moved on in his life and doing other things, and that's important and good for him. But I was like, we don't have a good video person who's affordable. So I was like, let's do it, and build up a passion for it.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, especially the built out of necessity. Like, well, there's no one here to fix it, so might as well learn how. I am too afraid. I'm not gonna lie. I'm too afraid to mess with anything electronic because I don't want to blow myself up or anything else. Like, that just is a huge fear in me for some reason that I would cross a wire and then lose my eyebrows or something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up, it's like I said, it was very rural, and we were very much like, fix it yourself. There's no one's gonna come help you. So, either you figure it out, you might mess it up, and that's just the way. That's the way it goes. You fix it as you mess it up. So
Yeah.
make it work. So yeah, no, I mean, but yeah, that definitely computers first. That progression, which has helped me in a lot of ways. So like, I can't complain.
So I'm trying to remember the Mac 2. Is that, I mean, man, I just remember, is that like the infamous Oregon Trail computer, like the one with the giant floppies? Like, is that, I'm trying to remember what is what from back then.
Yeah, we're talking green. It was only black and white with green text,
Yep.
and yeah, you could play like Oregon Trail, stuff like that. I didn't get to play too much on that because again, it was like one computer at that time, so it was more like, you know, at that time you're like writing little programs, or here's like, yeah, it was really simple. And then we didn't get much time to mess with them in school at all. But then later on, my mom finally, bought me a computer, and that, that kind of opened the doors to a lot of things, from playing like Space Invaders to there's this one game where you could like work your way down a tunnel,
Mhm.
I don't remember the name of it. And then, yeah, then that kind of just went off from there pretty much.
That's great. Yeah, computers, I mean, fascinating to me in terms of how they, I mean, I'm just glad they work, but like anytime I talk to someone who's computer savvy, I'm kind of like, how do you understand this? Like, oh, you just code this and do this and do that. And I'm just kind of like, that is so foreign to me. So I envy those brains who understand the all that goes into computing and computers and networking and all that stuff. Because it just, I've had some friends try to explain it to me, and I just feel so dumb. It's like I do not process, do not compute, for lack of a better term.
It's a different mindset. Some people like it, some people don't. I love it. Like even if I mean, I do it as a day job now as my primary source of income, but even if I didn't have that, I'd still be doing it, one way or another. In some ways it even makes me sad because I do depend on them just to work now. It's like I got other things to do. I don't need to be tinkering with hardware or tinkering with them anymore.
Yeah.
Especially in the audio area. I just needed to work because I got tons of work to do. But it's kind of sad. Like I was looking at, I'm looking at like my next computer soon, and I'm like, maybe I'll just buy a Mac that's already pre-built, ready to go, and that kind of makes me sad a little because I enjoy building them and I enjoy the challenge. But, to build them quiet with the right performance and the magic set of hardware so everything runs smoothly is really tough. And even if you do get to that point, it's a lot of tweaking and a lot of work to get it there. So part of me is like, what, my Macs, I buy them and they just work, and that's freaking great, and they're quiet and everything else. So, makes me sad a little on the inside, but we'll see. We'll see. It's not over yet. Might just have to make some time to build a machine.
Are you thinking about going Mac for your next studio computer?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I'm all Mac for my daily driver laptop's a Mac.
Why do you know? Oh, damn. Okay.
The commercial studio, the Decibel Foundry, that's all off of Mac. So yeah, the only holdout is really my main DAW behind me, and there's times when I get pissed because it'll have some weird issue, and I'm like, oh, versus my Mac at the studio has been a workhorse. I mean, that's the one has to be working. I'm really careful with it because, I don't have time to be dicking around with a client, trying to get something working when they just want to track their drums, So
yeah,
I have to hand it to Mac. It does just seem to kind of work, and that's freaking great. This one, it can be a little finicky, but it's okay because it's like my mixing mastering machine. So if I have to cuss at it a few times, at least it's kind of on my own time.
Yeah, I just wish they weren't so expensive. Like, I've been a Mac guy from the beginning of pro audio stuff, and it's just like, oh, you're awesome, but damn, are you paying for it? But that's just, I digress. But man, it hurts the pocketbook a little bit when you're going Mac for sure.
Oh yeah,
versus building a computer. Because I was talking to another buddy of mine. He's like, yeah, I just built this crazy supercomputer. It's like, it only cost me like $1,000. I was like, shit, that would have cost like $5,000 in Mac World, like to get the same type of thing.
Yep. But you get 5 years out of them, or longer. Like, I mean, dude, the machine holding up the Decibel Foundry, it's from 2012. Okay,
dude, I don't want to mention how old my computer is that I'm currently on because I'm afraid like I'll jinx it. So just like knock on wood, but it's still working because it's an old grandma here that we're still managing to make records on somehow.
Totally, yeah, and I get it now. I remember walking into some studios, when I was younger and kind of dumber. And, I'd walk in these studios and see these ancient machines. You're like, dude, what the hell? And and you kind of like, I don't know, I mean, maybe the vintage console should tell me something, but yeah, these old computers. And I was like, bro, but now I'm like, oh yeah, if it works, don't upgrade it. Like stable, you just need it to be stable. If it does everything you need to do, you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, I finally, just kind of speaking of that, like I finally found a guy to buy my old 192s off me. He's like, I got 2 studios that are running Pro Tools 8. And I have HD3 systems, and I just want to mimic that. It ain't broke. I ain't gonna fix it. Don't need to fix it. That's what I want. And I was just like, dude, I get it. Like, yeah, just let it ride. Just let it ride to the very, very end.
Because once it's stable, you don't want to mess with it, man. And I'm learning that more and more. This machine I tend to keep on the bleeding edge because I'm always chasing, a better workflow or something better. And then, and then Cubase puts out. I run Cubase, by the way, for everyone that doesn't know. But yeah. Like every time they put out a new one, you're like, oh man. And even my 2012, it's gonna have to go by the wayside soon because they're not supporting it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to upgrade at some point, which really is a bummer. But the Cubase puts enough features out where I'm like, damn, I need that, or I
Yeah.
want that in my life, So,
So we're going to slowly segue into DAWs because I want to get into the audio nerdery a little bit more. But kind of like I mentioned at the top here, you're a videographer, you're a producer, engineer, you are a musician. So let's divide the line now between like musician and the studio world. If someone like just forced you to pick a favorite, and yep, I'm making you do it. Would you rather be a musician or would you rather be a studio rat, like just a full-time producer engineer?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you how it's turned out. I do way more producing and engineering than playing instruments right now, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of it I think will come down to, I mean, a lot of it's kind of what pays the bills, right?
Yeah.
But assuming that wasn't an issue, I don't know, man. I think what keeps me going is the crazy diversity, right? Like, like I wouldn't give up any of them.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I love them all. I think, nowadays I would say and this has been a change probably since like COVID, right? Because I think a lot of us had time to reflect that, I think being a studio rat definitely is more my jam now. But if the right opportunity came along and it was like I could go touring, I would do that. I think of like Andy Sneap, right, who was played in bands, huge studio engineer, right, like one of the best of the best, and then he went touring with like what is it, with Judas Priest for a while, So I think if it was like a band at that level, it'd be like, oh yeah, let's do some touring. So I think you can switch back and forth, but at the same time, like being a musician, I love playing shows. Like that's the hard part, man. I love playing shows. So, but I was just having this conversation recently, but I was like, at this point in my career or my life, I have to think about what shows do I want to play. Like I love playing shows, but I'm kind of over playing for like the bartender, and I mean, I definitely will like, and on the road that happens, especially at the level I'm at, which are tiny, nobody knows them bands. But yeah, it depends on the opportunity,
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely doing way more studio work, way more behind the scenes than in front of the scenes. But I would definitely miss being on the other side. So yeah, I don't know, man, tough call.
Yeah, I know. I picked the hard ones. So I'm curious though, because obviously, I mean, you're a creative person. I've written with you. We've been in our band, our awesome black metal band that unfortunately never fully got off the ground. But obviously, you can find creativity in terms of being a musician and a writer, a composer. I'm curious. Can you find a parallel to that in the studio world? Like, do you find ways to fulfill your creative need in a studio environment?
Yeah, well, it depends what level the band lets you be at, right? So, and lately I've been pushing a lot harder to be more of a, I guess, maybe more of a producer and less of just like an engineer.
Mm.
So, on the engineering side, there's a lot of creative things. Like I'm constantly, trying something new or trying something different, right? Whether it's a different mic or a different mic technique or just trying different things all the time, like let's try to make this other weird amp work for a death metal album or something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that. I mean, that I just do and I don't really tell anybody about because I don't want the client to get freaked out about it. But there's a lot of things I try. And then also, we're always being creative on like, working within a band's budget or whatever, and then having the opportunity to like build a creative artistic image of that band also. So there's definitely some of that. But yeah, more and more I try to throw my producer weight around a little bit where I'll be like, you know what, let's change the tempo of this song. It's the tempo doesn't feel right. Or, just recently I was like, we got to change this drum beat. Like, this isn't working. We got to change the drum beat. We got to change this to make it work better. And because before I was like, well, just kind of stay out of the way, let the band be what they want to be. And I really love that about bands. But if like lately I've been pushing a little bit harder to be like, I kind of want to be more at the ground level, like, let me hear this song. Okay, that's too long, that's too short. Let's change this or change that. Maybe to the point, I mean, almost to the point to where I probably should be taking writing credit on some of these songs, but we're not talking, the bands I work with, we're not talking enough money where it's going to make a difference. So, whatever. change a word, claim a third is what I've heard, right? So not doing that, but yeah, I don't know. So I think that's where the creativity comes in, and it's fun because you get to like push the musician to do things like you're trying to describe it to them in a way that they understand, and then let them come up with it, and then it can be pretty exciting. I feel like it could definitely be fulfilling to see that come to life.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I still struggle with like where, if the band's not really specific about your role, they're just like, we want to make a record with you. One, where do you start putting that producer hat on? And two, like having the confidence to know that your ideas are good enough to improve their song. That's something I still struggle with, to be like, I think this would be a good idea, but I don't know. Do I have enough clout to say that? With you at least, what was kind of like, because you said you've been doing it more and more, was there kind of like an aha moment where you're like, oh shit, no, I do like this, I can craft these songs and make them better? Or was it just kind of more of a slowly build up thing, trying it over and over again until it just kind of got to that point?
I would say, I got some comments of like, hey, we're working with you. We want to hear your ideas, so there was some of that. And then there was definitely some of like just kind of just using my gut and then just trying it, be like, I hear this, I think it's going to be better. Can we try it? Was kind of how I started. And then, more and more musicians were like, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's still the artist's call, right? So, if they don't like it, they don't like it. And there's definitely been plenty of that where I've thrown something in there and they're like, nah, we don't like it. We don't dig it. Okay, cool. And that might just be because, they've just heard the song that way the whole time, so you have to try to kind of keep that in mind. So yeah, I just started throwing my weight around more and just seeing how it would happen. And then now I am finding that like, I have clients that come back to me because they were like, hey, we really liked those ideas you had. We want to work with you because you have those ideas. So I feel like, now I just do it. And sometimes I'll preface it with like, hey, I'm putting my producer hat on, so maybe being a little more picky than I would normally, but putting that on, if you're interested for this kind of input, this is what I think. And, and sometimes it can be pretty harsh,
Yeah.
like I would go this route, or do something different, or the song, I'm like, I like this. And obviously you do the whole, like, start with a compliment and then come in later with a critique. So you got to play that game. But yeah, I just started like, I think I was more just like, fuck it, I'm going to start giving my opinion, and it doesn't matter if I have the clout or not. I've never written a hit record, so I just trust my gut. I call it, I call it listening with my ass, because if my ass isn't shaking, we got a problem,
Dude, I'm totally stealing that.
Yeah, please.
So right now we're going to listen to the song with our ass, and if our ass is not shaking, then we are definitely doing something wrong. Oh, that's fantastic. It needs to be a bumper sticker or a T-shirt or something. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, and that, I mean, it really is. Like, I try to like listen, and if I'm not fucking, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling. There's something wrong, and then it's a matter of figuring that out, man.
So true, so true. Oh man, that's funny. Caught me off guard. That's a good one. So let's get a little nerdy here. DAWs, for those of you who don't know what that means, it stands for Digital Audio Workstation. To break that down even dumber, it's the software that we use to record. I know you have been Cubase for years and years and years and years. Has Cubase always been your DAW though?
No. I started with N-Track Studio, and I got asked this question recently, and I was like, yeah, wow, that's going back. I mean, I started on 4 tracks, right? My first recording thing was like a 4-track, or or a boombox, I guess, if you really want to go back, right? Everyone doing the boombox and trying to not blow it out. But yeah, my first computer DAW was N-Track Studio, and it was just one that I found. I think it was free or fairly cheap, and it's still out there. Actually, I looked it up recently. I was like, holy shit, that's still there, and it's pretty basic. So I started with that, and then I got my first Pro Tools rig, like out of college. I think I bought, Pro Tools LE, probably Pro Tools 5 or something. So I was doing Pro Tools there for a bit, and then, it came time to like make a big purchase, and I heed and hawed. I was actually stuck between like Sonar and Cubase, and this is Cubase like 2.4 or something. Cubase VST, really, really back there. They like did a whole renumbering. I mean, it's way back. We're talking 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I went with Cubase because I felt like it had more composing options, which is what I was doing at the time. I was doing way more composing. So I was like, all right, the way I like to write, I like the arranger track, which I still use all the time, which was, the way we used to write songs is like, this is part A 2 times, part B 2 times.
Oh
So
yeah.
because I liked writing that way, and Cubase, you can just do that. You can define sections, and then you can lay out basically part A 4 times, part B 3 times, and just build out your song that way. So I loved that, was like the killer feature, and I was like, cool, going Cubase. And yeah, I mean, it's probably not the best, and there's pros and cons. And if somebody was starting today, I don't recommend Cubase usually as the first
Really?
DAW. Yeah, I mean, it's got a hell of a learning curve. I mean, I know all its buttons. I can make it scream. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what's important. What do you know? Because
Yeah.
you want it to be transparent. You just want to work, get your ideas out, do what you need to do, and not have to think about it. So now that I know everything that Cubase does, it's great. But somebody new, I was like, I mean, it took me a while to really get my head wrapped around it. And then, but I mean, as I've grown with it, I mean, it still does a ton of stuff that no other DAW uses. I gave Reaper a really good shot, and I still run Reaper sometimes.
Mhm.
And there's a couple features of Reaper that I like over Cubase, but man, I mean, I don't know. Reaper has a hell of a learning curve now too, because it has gotten so advanced.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I might start going back to recommending Cubase. I got to play with like the early versions and see what those feel like. But like the $100 versions, because that's where most people can
Yeah.
afford.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, the more I use it and the more I have to flex its muscle. I mean, I just had to do like a full tempo remap of like live tracks.
Oof.
Just recently, I used like tempo detection to figure out like how they were playing songs from like a cell phone recording, and then we rebuilt the tempo map from that. And then I had to time stretch all their scratch tracks to match that, so we didn't have to re-record scratch tracks. Like, I don't even know how and all that took like 30 minutes versus it used to take hours. So I'm just like, I have like, how did we do this before?
It is kind of funny 'cause, like I know I'll bitch to you about me doing something in Pro Tools, and you're like, "Oh, Cubase will do that in 5 minutes. Oh, you can do that in Cubase in 2 seconds." And I'm just like, "Damn it, Augustine, why do you gotta?" Maybe I will drink the Kool-Aid eventually, but I'm just so used to Pro Tools. You know what I mean? Like,
Dude,
but I'm not gonna lie, some of the features that you say about Cubase are just like, "Oh, Pro Tools, why can't you do that?" You know what I mean? Like, it's a zesty program just based on the things that you say it can do, and what in the spectacles and that you pulled with it. It's like, maybe I don't know.
yeah, I mean, Pro Tools is still the standard, and I would argue it's still like, if you're starting out, because it is just like a tape machine in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That is fucking awesome. And then if you're running like Pro Tools, like I could see the appeal once I understood how TDM systems work and all those old systems where like everything's integrated, no latency. I'm like, that is sexy. Like that's a big deal, because latency is a nightmare, and and it can ruin a performance, right? Especially somebody who's not used to it. So that is massive. And yeah, so I definitely could see, why Pro Tools was so popular.
Yeah.
And it works. I mean, it works. I mean, it's not stopping people from making records. Like, and really, all the stuff, all the muscle I flex is making up for per musicianship. So, if you're starting to talk about, auto tune and the ruining of music through, making them into robots, sorry. I mean,
What's turd polishing, right? That's what
yeah,
we.
yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to be better about that. Try not to say like, yeah, this is a turd and I'm polishing it, because that's kind of degrading. But sadly, a lot of it is, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand why, right? Like, people are like, oh, back in the tape days, like, yeah, but back in the tape days, I mean, musicians could make a living. So
Yeah.
you're talking about musicians that they would tour, they'd play, their 1,000 hours or whatever to be good at anything. They could play 10 hours a day, like they could do that, right? Versus now, a musician, especially at my level, I mean, they're working 2 jobs and got a family to raise, and a house to take care of and everything else, and so they don't have the time to like practice or really hone in, that craft. And then they're trying to do a record. I mean, and they should be allowed to do a record, man. It's their expression, and they're great records. We just gotta, and I mean, we could do 100 takes till they're right and all that shit, but why, when we can edit it and make it and do it cheaper? Which, I hate to say that that's part of the game, but it's like, how can we put out a record for a couple grand? Like, we got to be able to do that, and I got to get paid for my time appropriately, and they should be able to put out records. Like, there's no reason for them not to, just because they aren't full-time musician. So
No, you bring up an interesting point to where it's like, I mean, the recording world is just completely changed the game in terms of people who now have the ability to make records, which I think is super cool. I mean, granted, can you say the musicianship was better 15 years ago, 20 years ago back in tape? Yeah, I mean, because like you said, full-time musician, they could practice their craft and they could do all that stuff. However, I think the level of creativity that's in music nowadays far surpasses what was available back then. I mean, someone could have an idea and with a limited amount of musical knowledge can bring that idea to life in a recording and share it with the world within a couple of hours for that matter. And I just think it's I think it's such a cool thing. It's overwhelming because you're like, what do I listen to? How do I find this? What subgenre is this? But at the same time, I mean, just from a creative standpoint, I think it's funny. So from a creative standpoint, I think it's awesome. From a studio owner, I'm like, damn it, because because they can do it on their own with a laptop, a microphone, and a simple interface, But I think the creative side kind of overrules that for me in terms of like, good on you. I think yes, express yourself, do it, find a way to do it, make it happen. I think it's just a really cool thing.
yeah, absolutely. No, I'm in the same boat, and there's definitely times I'll I travel or something and I'll have just like my laptop and I'm just making music on my laptop and
Yeah,
I'm like, man, it'd be nice not to have to need all that, to do it. That's a great time, and I'm all for that. I'm all for that. And I feel like, at some point, it's not like we had a big closing of studios there for a while, but I
yeah,
mean, if you want my honest opinion of that, like I think when I made my first, record back in, the early 2000s, which got me into recording, was like I started calling around studios. We're talking 2000s money, so counting for inflation, it's even more. But like, they were like quoting me 10 grand to record like a 10-song death metal album, and you listen to the quality of the recordings and you're like, this is really bad, right? So you're paying top dollar for
yeah,
really bad work. And I feel like audio engineers at that time were, I hate to say it, but we're kind of phoning it in and
yeah.
able to make money. They were making money and they weren't even that good, right? They didn't care. I remember being in there and they would cringe at everything we'd play, and they just didn't know. It was really sad. And so since then, that almost inspired me to be like, well, if you're going to do that badly, I can do it myself,
Yeah.
and so I feel like a lot of the studios that close, and I mean, some great studios closed, but I don't know of any like actually well-regarded engineers that like went hungry or anything.
Yeah.
So, I feel like, I felt like it was good. It kind of weeded a lot of that out, where now to do this, you have to have a passion for it. Yeah, there's not a ton of money in it anymore, but then I think that just helps drive that passion more.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still, I mean, a lot of musicians I work with, like they look at a computer and they're just like lost, So, to the point to where I'm handling like everything. Like I'm the ones that puts it online for them. I do all the duplication. I do everything because they can't handle it, A lot of my clients don't even have bank accounts, they're, so we're talking, they really distrust technology. So, from that state, it's like, so basically I still think there's like room for us to work,
Yeah.
plenty of work for us. So I'm not super worried about that, but I am super excited that, yeah, people can record stuff out of their bedroom, and that's awesome. That's awesome. And then I can too, right? I can write a song back there and just I could do it on my laptop and just crush it out. And I think that's awesome and important.
I almost kind of wonder what would it be like to take someone like oh shoot, is it George Martin? Is that his name? The Beatles producer? I think that's his name. Shame on me for not knowing this. That guy, you know what I mean, who was working on
Yeah.
records, and drop him into today's world and see the technology and just watch his mind melt. You know what I mean? I think that would be such kind of a crazy cool experience to let someone who was that creative with that limited technology to introduce him to today's technology. Like, what kind of mad scientistry-ness could that guy produce at that point in time, Because crap, the stuff they did with 4 tracks and 8 tracks, like timeless recordings.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and you're dealing with some of the best musicians in the world
Well,
too.
that
But
doesn't hurt.
like, but yeah, I mean, but it'd be interesting because it's a great argument because, I think, limitation, being limited like breeds creativity. right? So knowing that, like, you know what, to get this delay effect, we're going to run the tape around like multiple mic stands. Like that blows my mind. Like I just would never, I mean, maybe I would, I don't know, but I would never think of that, you know? Like who the hell would be like, yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, it's crazy. I almost wonder if it'd be like option paralysis, right? Somebody's so creative that they're just like stumbled by options. But we also grew up with all this stuff, you know. It's not
Yeah.
like we dropped into it one day and here we are. So yeah, I definitely wonder. But I mean, you know, the reality is creative people will create amazing things. So
That's true.
I suspect it would be pretty amazing. And there's plenty of awesome creative producers and engineers now
Oh
that
yeah.
blow my mind, you know, that I'm just like, wow, man, I would have never thought of that, or who would have thought to do that sound, or, you know, sound design is something that still, you
Dude.
know, kind of blows me away of like how much work it is and how creative they'll be with like, you know, let's take celery sticks and snap them or something. I'm like, to make a snare out of it. I'm like, I would just hit a snare. Yeah. I mean,
No, yeah, no, it really is. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I love watching, like, I'll try to find them on YouTube, like the behind the scenes stuff of like sound design for movies.
oh yeah, so
And those
awesome.
always blow my mind. It's like, oh my God, this is an epic sound. But realistically, it's just a donkey hee-hawing that we pitched down and then added some reverb, and that's the dragon's roar. And you're like, well, I can't look at the dragon the same way now because now all I see
Yeah.
is donkey. But I love that aspect of it. And again, just another way to be creative. It's like that I think would be a kick in the pants job. Like if I mean, I love, you know, doing recording and all that fun stuff, but man, I think it would be super dope to work on like a soundscape or ADR or whatever you want to call it for film, or Foley or whatever the case would be. That just seems like it would be so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would be, but I'd have to work with somebody, right? Like I'm sure I could capture it, no problem, but it would be, I wouldn't jump in there and be like, would you take on sound design for a movie? I'm like,
Nope.
you know, I would definitely have to find a mentor to help me.
Yeah.
But it'd be tons of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the studio stuff for sure, but another aspect, a big aspect of who you are is live sound.
Yep.
So now, again, you had to pick one: studio or live sound.
Oh, studio, hands down. Fucking, I mean,
surprise me.
like, and I do a lot of live sound, so I quit live sound there for a while. I was like, I'm never doing this again. I sold everything, and then I kind of got back into it because of necessity again. Yeah, no way. I mean, there's some things I like about live sound. Live sound, you know, it's more about damage control than, you know, crafting a perfect mix. You're fighting feedback. You're just trying to not to make it sound like shit most of the time.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. You also, I mean, I'm glad I do live sound because you learn how to work fast. You learn how to like use your gut. You learn how to like make it work, right? Like, you know, so that's really important in the studio. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's like a running joke, like, you studio guys, you get to like all the time you need, and you get to like be in air conditioning, and you know, and you get to do it more than once, and blah blah blah. And it's like, fuck yeah, we do. Yeah. So I mean,
oh man, no.
So yeah, no. The thing about live sound though is like if you fuck up a mix, you're having a bad day, right? Like, you know, for whatever reason, you're just having a rough day. Feedback is out of control, and the singer's like whispering in the fucking mic, and you know, but she needs the monitors so loud, and the band behind her is a death metal band or something, you know. So you have a bad night, it's over, right? That's it. You have your night, that's it. No, you know, you have a bad day on a mix, which hopefully is a few bad days, which I mean, but even mixes I thought I had a good day, and I listen back now and I'm like, God, I can't believe somebody paid me money for that mix. You know, the sad part is you have to live with that, right? You go back and you throw on that album from 5 years ago, and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? You know?
No, it's true.
So,
yeah, I do live sound maybe like once or twice a year, like on the small level, to remind myself why I don't like live sound. It's always like, maybe I'll try it again, then I'll do it. Be like, nope, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Yeah, and even now, I'm trying to get back out of it. Like I'll do it for the metal shows, and the show I'd already be there for. I'm like, all right, well, I might as well run sound because I'd be more pissed if it sounds like shit, you know. So I might as well do it. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, I don't know. I've been kind of trying to price myself out of that. Just like, I'll do it, but it's expensive. But here's these other guys that are honestly just as good, and they're cheaper, and they're trying to do it for a living. So I'm like, you know what? Let them have it.
Well, you bring up kind of an interesting point. Another one that I wanted to touch on is that because you just said, if you were going to be at a show anyway, you would just might as well run sound. I mean, you're kind of responsible for a thriving scene of where you're at. I mean, so much to the point. So I remember there was an article written about you in your local paper about how, you were essentially have built this community and it's essentially doing really well and kind of thriving with where you're at. I just think that's so freaking cool because I think at least in Minneapolis, at least at least the scene that we're in, it's so kind of clicky and not communicative, and it's just kind of frustrating. Like, I mean, was the scene like kind of that when you first started, or how did you kind of craft it? I mean, I know you're a very modest person, not gonna take credit for it, but I'm giving you credit for it. What was, I guess, the key in terms of building such that kind of community and fellowship and where you were at?
Yeah, I mean, so in a lot of ways, it was going back to like when I started watching. I mean, I'm from New Mexico, right? So I've been here, and I remember going to parties when I was like 16 years old, and there'd be all be like Logical Nonsense playing, who is one of our like bigger like metal heavier bands to kind of they're not even metal, they're almost like hardcore punk, but they're one of the cross genre bands that I love, and they were awesome, and they did really well, and they moved away, did some stuff, and then came back, and like a lot of bands know who they are. So I have to hand it to that time and that scene of kind of like they would throw a show and there'd be like 200 people there.
Yeah.
And then my band started in infancy back then, and we would play like Warehouse 21, which was like a teen center, and we would play some of these other shows, and I mean, like, to us, we were killing it. There'd be like 100 people that show up, 150 people, and we thought we were king of the world. So, and then I moved away, and Minneapolis's scene was very different at that time. I mean, that scene was so disjointed. Like because I was just going to every show to see what I could find.
Yeah.
And I would go to like The Rock, and I would see a band that sounded like Killswitch Engage, right? Pretty much, right? Like a Killswitch Engage ripoff band. I'd go see them on Friday, and I'd go see like 4 bands that sounded just like that. The next night, Saturday, I'd go see another 4 bands that sounded just like Killswitch Engage. And then I would be talking to the bands and be like, hey, yeah, these other bands played the other night, and they're still on the fucking marquee, right? They're still on tonight, Friday, Rock, XYZ, the Friday, Saturday, these bands. I'm like, yeah, I saw those other bands. Are like, who the fuck are they? Like, they had no clue who they were, didn't care. And they barely even knew the other bands that were playing. Like, the scene was so disjointed. And to be fair, I mean, shit, man, I remember opening like our, what's the fucking weekly entertainment alternative out of there? It's like, the reporter, City Pages. Yeah. I'd open that, and there'd be like 5 metal shows every night, and I'm like, god damn, which one do I go to? So I'd be like trying to find the bands online, and then where the fuck is this venue and all this shit. So yeah, so that it was very disjointed, right? But also the band quality was very different too. Like, I'd go see like Rivkit, and they would kill it, right? They looked to me like a national band, and they were a local band, right? So so I got that experience, and then coming back to New Mexico, there was a few bands that would draw pretty well, but then there was a lot of shows where it'd be back to the 4 people or whatever, and I don't know, I felt like, and there was like, then there were cliques, like there was like this like certain clique of like people that I was running with, and there was like the Savage Wisdom clique, and it just felt very separated and cliquey. So then when I started playing and carrying kind, that's when I was like, all right, well, for my band to be successful here, I need to like start bringing this together. And so I think that, and I can't take all the credit, because there was definitely like, you had the Dave McMasters, Dave Ahern Sarand, the Damians and Ben Brodsky's, those guys who started a venue called The Cave. And so it was like a DIY. I think you've been there, that DIY warehouse venue.
That was a fun. And that place is a hoot, man. Like that's just like get down and dirty, and let's, that was fun. That was a great show.
Yeah. So they started that. We're maintaining that, and then we also had, and they were doing stuff too. They were actually one of the other, like, I would almost say cliquey circles by my perspective. Maybe was or wasn't true, but like just trying to like purposely cross book shows and try to build that out, throw parties, and then also, Pasquale, someone I got to credit also, because he had a lot of connections to bigger bands. So we tried to like, hey, let's get like touring bands through here. And then with the touring bands, let's make sure we can get local bands on there and just try to like, hey, you know, we have a metal scene and people are excited about it. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely a conscious effort and a lot of work, and you know, some good shows and some really bad shows. So you know, it's kind of all there. And then you know, with post COVID, I've been hiding out a little bit more, just trying not to like overwork myself. So we have a new guy who's kind of taken over. This guy Steve Hilson, and he's been doing like Metal Mondays and kind of taking over some of the metal booking. But I'm still heavily involved. I'm still running sound for a lot of those shows. You know, I'm still there, and I think a lot of people still credit me, even though he's doing most of the work. But you know, I'm getting back into it. We'll see how it goes with the right shows. But I mean, but it's back to that trying to be selective, and we had a lot of venues close, and so our scene took a hit. We also don't have a lot of bands. A lot of bands stopped practicing, so I'm kind of waiting till a lot of these bands kind of get their shit together, and so we have some more bands, including my own. I mean, shit, my bands are dragging ass right now. So you know, yeah. So you know, we gotta get shit back together, but it'll come back. I mean, the scene is still strong, and people are still coming out to shows, and we're still getting good numbers, and people are really supportive. You know, still more supportive than our, you know, Albuquerque or most big cities I've been to. So
Yeah.
I think it's on its way back.
Oh, I think that's so cool, man. Like I envy what you've done in your scene and just kind of that vibe. Because I mean, even though Minneapolis has got a ton of music, or the Twin Cities area, like I said, man, it's just the bands don't support each other. You know what I mean? It's a frustrating thing, and I would love to see that change. And I don't know if I'm the guy to change it, and I don't know if I want to be the guy that changes it, because that's a huge undertaking. But it would be nice to be in a similar situation to where you brought, you know, your town too. I just give you all the credit in the world for doing that. I think that's just freaking awesome. So, but yeah, man, we are approaching the hour mark here, and that's what I'm trying to keep these interviews at. But I still have a couple questions that I'd be remiss if I did not ask, because for one, I'm a gearhead and I love to talk gear with you, and you know that. I think I bug you probably way more than I should about gear and everything.
I love gear. It's a
Dude.
terrible sickness.
Oh, it's just gear porn, geargasm, just gear fetish, gear whatever. You know what I mean? So as a okay, so let's say this: as a guitar player, because I know you play guitar and bass. We'll touch on bass though. As a guitar player, what is your go-to piece of gear for live? It could be a guitar, a pedal, whatever. What is your, as a guitar player though? What is your go-to? You can't live without.
Well, it'd be well, you know, a guitar, any guitar, obviously, but like but yeah, no, I mean, tuner. I mean, that's a lame answer, but got to be in tune, man. Now, but you know, I've been trying to find a new live rig. I've been playing the same live rig, gosh, for a long time. You know, or pieces of it. And I was, you know, tube head for a long time, and then kind of slimmed it back down. But yeah, I mean, I love my rig now. So yeah, my E530, it's an Angle E530 preamp with a GSP 1101, which really dates me. And then right now,
Minneapolis, though. Didn't you?
Yeah. I've had that since then. Yeah, and the E530 too. I've had that since then. So I didn't have it in my live rig. I was using the Angle Powerball, and I was using the preamp in there for a long time. And then I went to a NAMM show, and I was like, man, I love these boutique amps. I was like, wait a minute, I have boutique amps. Like I have that E530. I've got like good shit, so I should probably use it. And yeah, I've been pretty happy. And I mean, you know, and I'm like you said, I love pushing the boundaries of technology. I've got the Kemper, I've got the Axe Effects, I've got a Neural DSP, the Quad Cortex. You know, I use plugins a lot, you know, like whatever. But yeah, I don't know, man. Using them live, I don't know, you know, the real tubes, and you know, kind of my tube hybrid setup, because I run a 1500 watt power amp too. So those all that together, I don't know, it works for me, you know, and it's the closest I can get to a tube head. But even, man, recently, you know, I was playing guitar with this band Cemetery Rain, and I got to use like their 100 watt, you know, 5153s, and they were gracious enough to let me play it. And I was just being lazy. I was like, I'm not even gonna bring a tuner. I'm just gonna tune by ear and just plug my guitar straight in. Like, fuck it, no noise gate, no tuner, nothing. Just like let's do this, bitch. Man, and it was a religious experience, I will say. To be plugged straight into like a killer high gain amp like that, cranked loud as shit with a band who's tight as fuck. Those guys are crushingly tight. And dude, I mean, it was honestly a religious experience. I was like, holy shit. I've been missing out, man. So I don't know. Part of me wants to go back to tube heads, because they're Yeah, dude, there's something about them.
No,
It was I was like going to church. It was so crazy.
Church of the Holy Tube. Uh,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I'm another with. I mean, I go. You know this. We talked about this. I go with digital just because of ease of use. You know what I mean? It's just so freaking easy. But
Same. Yeah.
it's. I'm not gonna lie. When you brought that up, I'm like, man, it's been a hot minute since I've put myself in front of like a tube amp and cranked it and just felt noise.
Yeah, dude.
You know?
Telling you, man, it'll ruin you because dude, I'm ruined, and I'm like, yeah. So I'm shopping for a killer live. I mean, I have a lot of tube heads, but they're all kind of like one trick ponies,
Yeah.
Or I value them so much, I'm afraid to like
Yeah.
play the local launch pad, get beer spilled on them, kind of thing. Even though they would take it, but I have a hard time, taking this prized amp that's been on, tons of records, sounds killer every time I need it, and to just like, yeah, let's go spill beer on it at, at a backyard party, like, I just can't do it.
No,
So
I get that. The fear of it's much easier to take a beer spilt on a $300 or $400 amp pedal versus a $4,000 boutique amp. Yes, I understand. Yeah. Most definitely. Okay, so now studio. Let's talk about microphone. What is your desert island microphone? And don't think 57 because that's too cliche.
yeah, for sure. No. Honestly, man, and this is like kind of a cop out too. And back to like the modeling thing, I fucking love the modeling mics, man. The Slate
Yeah,
Digital stuff.
yeah.
I mean, it's cheating because it's like, well, that one mic is like could emulate, 15 or 20 mics, so that is kind of a cop out. But I gotta say, man, I every time I use them, I'm impressed. So yeah, I'd have to go with that. If I wasn't gonna go modeling mic, shit. Damn. I don't even know because I use those modeling mics now on everything.
You know what, I need to get one just because you praise them all the time, and I'm just like, damn it, maybe I just I need to bite the bullet and just get one. Just because like you said, you could change it in the mix, you could do all this other stuff. It's like, damn, that's so cool.
Well, like, just recently there was a thread of somebody who's like, how do you phase a line of 57 in an ML2, which is the Slate little pencil condenser, which can emulate like a 57 and stuff. Like, how do you phase align them, right? And like, for me, I don't give a shit. I just throw them in front of the grill and I'm like, whatever, sounds good. And it sounds good. So I never, I was like, they're in phase, whatever. And some guys are like, well, you can do a tick and like get them just right, and because the capsules aren't perfectly aligned. I mean, I get that, but that's great. But then some guy was like, just use the mic, set it to 57, duplicate the track, and then set that to whatever other mic you want, duplicate the track. And I was like, of course, why didn't I think of that, right? And I'll do that even. I mean, I'll duplicate the track. I'll be like, well, this 421 with the 57 is, let me try a, Royer R21, 121. And to be able to switch that on the fly is money. But yeah, so yeah. And I was like, well, duh, of course. So really you could single mic with that, swap it for 57, swap it for a, D112 or something. So then, just like, and blend it all together. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. I mean, honestly, but my go-to cab is a 57, that ML2, and then I'll switch it to whatever sounds best. 8 times out of 10, it's a Royer R121, which I probably should just buy a real one because that's money. But this last
122,
the 122, that's the active one, right?
122 is the active, yeah.
Either one. I was doing the 121, but
neither of them, they're both just like, oh, when it comes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, just recently an RE20, a 57 with an RE20 was like the magic number. Yeah. And I was like, I never thought of using those two together. So, so you just never know. But yeah, then to switch it in the mix, money.
Damn it. All right. Christmas list.
Yeah. I think I'm in audio forums and people shit on them all the time. And I'm like, I don't know, man, they sound pretty fucking good to me. And again, the ability to like, for the verses, I want a ribbon mic. And then for the choruses, I want a, U47 or something to give it more body. You can do that.
Think about that. So you could switch them like midway through song, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And I mean, and we could do it in the studio, but who has the budget for that shit? Nobody does. I mean, what am I? No, that's not good. I mean, I'd love, I'd love to if I had the time and money, but when you're doing a band that's got, my day rate is 2 days of their labor rate, of 2 days of them at work. That's just not, we can't do that. So throw a mic up there, record it, and then figure it out later.
That kind of brought us back to your point originally. It's like, people they just want to be creative now. And it's like, sometimes it's easier just to do it in the mix as opposed to making them do multiple takes or swapping out 6 million microphones. Just like, screw it. I got one microphone that'll do it all. Point, click, done. See you later.
Yep. Yeah. And the bigger one, the ML2 or the ML1, the large diaphragm, honestly sounds good on its own. Sometimes I'll use that in the mix. No modeling,
Really? Okay.
It's actually a cool sound. There's been a few times where I was like, this is it. And part of it is, they're performing with it and I'll just have the modeling off and have it monitoring through the console. So we kind of have to do that just for latency considerations. But but there's been times, so they're performing with that mic. So there's some of that going on. But I'm like, this sounds great. I'm just going to print it as is, and then lately I got the Townsend microphone. And I'm still figuring it out. It definitely sounds amazing. I would say it sounds more open, maybe a little better than the Slate one.
Okay.
But it has two capsules that you have to like use at the same time. So the workflow I'm still trying to like figure out. Like, how do I keep a dry track and a wet track and edit between them and pitch correct them? I'm still figuring that out. But
interesting. Okay, I you got the Townsend. It's coming back to me now that you got that, but that you mentioned that. But I totally forgot that you got that guy.
Yeah, it's killer, and it's more premium looking too. So kind of it makes people feel like, oh, you brought up the nice microphone.
You know that I've noticed, it cracks me up, but like just turning the damn microphone upside down, like just like, oh my god, my favorite singer did that. Like for some reason, just turning the damn mic upside down, just like makes them feel so much cooler.
Oh yeah,
it's goofy how that it's. So what we do is so much psychology, and what we do, it's kind of ridiculous.
Dude, that's well, because we got to get a good performance, man. I mean, the gear these days doesn't matter that much. I'm gonna argue, right? Like, of course, there's cool, colorful gear and I mean, they're whatever, but like, and I'm always torn on that, right? Because especially the musicians at the level I work at, like, I'm not working with the Grammy Award winners. I'm working with local bands and local guys that are honestly insanely creative, great songwriters, and some of them are incredible players too. But there's always the set that are a little rougher around the edges, and like it a $10,000 microphone, a Sony 800 and a Neve 1073 preamp is not going to help them sing in tune. That's not going to help them play tighter or faster or slower or whatever, right? So it's always that balance. But and I think also, like, nowadays it's like I buy the gear for me, right? Like, I want it to sound this way, right? But as far as like for the song, like you don't need that. You can get. I could make a record with a Behringer interface and a laptop all day. Bring it. Let's do it.
It's funny. We back when I used to teach, we kind of did an experiment on that where we took the most expensive microphones that we had and put them on a drum kit. And then, so we recorded it, and then we just put nothing but 57s on a drum kit. Was there a difference? Yeah, but I mean, was it a crazy big difference? No. And were we able to get the whole 57 kit work just fine?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, that's a good experiment. That's a good one. Yeah, and I do shit like that all the time just because I get bored. Like, I'm like, let's put I don't know, here's this Behringer mic and let's put it in the kick drum. Why not? But yeah.
So it's kind of fun to do that because then you discover goofy things, which are just fun. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna put a tub of water in front of the kick drum and dangle a microphone in it, and then see what happens. And lo and behold, it's the new craze. You know what I mean? So I love the creativity and the freedom we have if you have time in the studio to make those things happen. It's a good time.
Yeah, and sometimes I wish I had more downtime in the studio. I tend to fill my downtime with like mixing or editing or video lately. But yeah, at that time it would be like, because you kind of need that time to experiment, and that's where that creativity comes out. Like, hey, let's try this weird thing and see what happens. And maybe you're like, this is garbage, or this is amazing. But yeah, for me, unfortunately, on that front, because again, we're working with such tight budgets, it's like, let's just get it out of here. We're trying to do a full length in 3 days, so it's like you just got to go with what works.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, before we wrap up, I do want to give you a chance to plug or promo anything that you have going on. I'll put links to whatever in the description, but if there's anything you're working on or want to shout out or say to the world, let me have it, dude.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. So, definitely check out my website, augustineortiz.com.
I'll check.
Got my mixes out there.
Got this ready.
There you go. Yeah. So, always looking for work. Video. I've been doing a lot of video lately. So definitely check that out. I just started a new YouTube channel called Santa Fe Loud, where I'm like capturing a lot of these local shows and local bands that we've been talking about and trying to post them up there. So I'm gonna be posting some new not new, but some new videos of old stuff, like old bands I played in, things like that. I was just reminiscing about, these old, VHS tapes we have and trying to digitize those and get them up there and then go forward, capture more of these. And then, just if you follow me on Instagram, on Facebook, come say hi.
Augustine, dude, I am so stoked that you were my first guest. Thank you for just being a bud and a bro and just a genuine good dude. I love you like a brother. Thank you again. If you guys haven't already, please do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button. There will be more of these podcasts to come. But yeah, Augustine, dude, thank you so much. Super appreciate it. Hope you guys got stuff out of this. I know I did. I think I'm going to enjoy these more than people watching because I get to ask whatever the hell I want and learn whatever I want. So, hey, man, go me. But yeah, more to come. I got several guests lined up over the next couple months, which is great. But thank you again to everyone who watches. Thank you again, Augustine. To my friends out there, take it easy. If it's easy, take it twice. Keep it nice. And I will see you guys soon.